it means to be old, or get old, or feel old. Go ahead.
I don't know.
Well, that's your essay. You're going to do some research on that? Yeah? And that's the point. You know, these ideas have been around for, I mean, they've been around for at least 5,000 years, as far as I know. I mean, it's like when you sit and write an essay about whatever, you know, the topic is, you're dating a 5,000-year-old fellow. You know, the notion of justice, for example, or the notion of love or philosophy, they've been around for a long, long time. And so when you, as a 15, 16, 20, 30-year-old are sitting and writing an essay, the truth is you're sitting next to a guy or a gal that's, you know, a few thousand years old. And you want to like grasp, understand who this person is within like a couple of hours. And that's just, you know, a very bold undertaking. And that's all it is. So my recommendation is you continue doing what you've been doing. You know, write great essays, you know. Make sure you use like flowery language to deceive your instructors, deceive yourself, get yourself an A. Go to UC Berkeley, but that's not really a good school. Go to Stanford, even though that's, you know, not a very good school. Yale, Oxford, schools with big names. Make your parents proud. Cultivate your intellectual abilities. Choose for yourself a nice companion. Make sure, you know, they have money and they're good to their parents. They don't smoke, they don't drink, they don't do porn. Get married, have a few kids, and just try to eat well, not to get too sick, so you can just die in your sleep peacefully. There is no other way to live and die. And that should be your like goal for the next 60 years. You're from Vietnam? Where are you from? Where are you from?
Here?
Your parents?
Vietnam.
Vietnam. Okay. How are your parents? Yeah. What are they up to these days?
Sorry?
What do they do? In tech? And you? What do you do?
Marketing.
You have your bachelor's already?
Finish this semester.
Where?
UC Berkeley.
In what?
Computer science.
And then this is your bachelor's, right?
Yeah.
And then
Work for a bit. And then get a master's.
why not just get a master's?
A lot of the programs that I'm interested in require like research experience, which I don't have. So I'm gonna spend the next year like working and building on my resume and like that.
It's good. Good luck. Krill, is that you? How are you? What's going on? If you have any, sure.
If I could recommend, like, use one of the student questions.
Okay. Do you have a question? Okay. Markel, how about you? No, don't do that.
I don't remember what question.
Okay. No, don't do that. Just give me a question.
I forgot it.
What?
I forgot it. I had it.
If you were able to like generate a question from thin air.
It was one of the questions.
Okay. Melissa, since you're young and fresh, I've not been contaminated by life.
In one of the videos, I remember you saying that you take someone's family away, or if you mess with like, their external life, they'll eventually get over it. But if you like, make them, if you affect them, like making them sick, then they won't get over it. I was wondering what the difference is.
Oh. I think we were talking about, I'm not sure. It reminds me of a tale that you find in the Old Testament as well as the Quran, which is the book of Job. And you know, my sister-in-law was diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer, about maybe 7, 8 months ago. She's about 45, 46. I had a triple bypass last year, March, where they cut your chest open, they take out your heart, they spit on it, you know, play with it a little bit, and they kind of shove it back in there. And then they weld your bones together. When I got home after like 5 or 6 days from the hospital, she did give me a call saying, I'm sorry that you're sick and almost dead and all that. So thank you, it's very kind of you. But she never came to visit me. And I didn't hear her voice cracking when she was talking to me. And when after 3, 4 months I was finally able to go to Roseville to visit my family, or to just, travel, we shook hands and that was it. I couldn't detect any sadness in her facial expression towards me. It's just me. And she's been married to my brother for, 20 years or so. It's a very formal relationship, but I didn't feel like she was grieving the fact that I was so sick and close to death. When she was diagnosed with cancer, the story was very, very different. She was on the phone with doctors every single day. She cried. Her sister came from Vancouver, and her sister was a pharmacist. She took a year off just to be around her. She was sad, And it's a very interesting phenomenon. You're really concerned about your grade. I am not concerned about your grade. And so the sort of emotions that live inside you don't live inside me. The sort of worries and concerns you have, I don't really have. And what you have in the book of Job is that yes, my animals were butchered, I'm very sad. Yes, my kids were decapitated right in front of my eyes. As a father, I'm very sad. But you know what grief is, it comes and then after a while it just disappears, it goes. That's what happens in loss. You're attached to something, you're either forced to give it up or life just takes it from you, and then you adjust, you adapt, very much like what Charles Darwin had argued. He was able to overcome all of that. Then something really strange happens to Job, which is he is touched by cancer. It's no longer my son or my wife or my daughter or my neighbor or my parents. It was him. For the first time, he had to confront the fact that he's going to die. And he wants to know why. Imagine that you and I are married and I do everything, you know. I cook, I clean, we go anywhere, everywhere. I listen to you, I do as you say. I'm just a yes man in the relationship. And then you have an affair. You say, it doesn't make any sense. Did I misstep anywhere? Did I do anything wrong? And the truth is, no. Life is just life. And Job wants to know why he's dying, why he's sick, why, after doing everything that God had asked him to do, why his life has fallen apart. And I guess in the end, what he comes to understand through the mouthpiece or whirlwind or God is that life doesn't make any sense, and life is unjust, and life is unfair. Some people are just born with brain damage, and some people are born with, a healthy set of neurons. Some people are born with having crummy parents, and some people just have great parents. Some people are attractive, some people are ugly. And that's just the way things are. And it takes a while for Job to kind of come to embrace this particular fact that, you know what? This is the injustice of life, and there isn't much you can do about it. But there is a piece of advice that Job receives from God is stop being a goddamn whiner. Stop screaming, stop whining, stop crying. Grow up, look at life, pay attention. This is what life is. Be a man and live it the best you can. And Job, from that point on, becomes a very thankful creature. Not because life is good, but because he understands that despite all the evils in life, he needs to just man up and relate to things in a very mature way. And at that point, something really even more interesting happens, which is if he had 50 cows at the very beginning of the stories, God gives him 500. If he only had one wife, now he has like 50 wives. Actually, I don't know about that part, but it would have been nice if it wasn't the story, So, yeah, just any follow-ups? I mean, I don't even know if that answered anything. The truth is, I forgot your question. I think it's like early stage of dementia. Who are you again? Go ahead. Nothing? She's 17 too. Anything? Okay. Yeah.
You talk a lot about how society is very complex and how the human population has grown exponentially, and um, that many of the solutions that worked for humanity in the past does not work or cannot be applied in the present. Can the same be said about democracy? Does democracy still work in the present? Is it still applicable? And is, I suppose the question that I'm trying to ask is, one of the slogans in a lot of the voting campaigns that you hear is vote for your lives or vote for your rights. Is that really ethical to make someone vote for their, I guess, their right to exist as they are in society?
Have you read Pride and Prejudice? Or have you seen the movie with Knightley Kate or Caitlin Knightley or that? So you have, let's just say you have two sisters. Let's say Melissa and Nadia. Okay. Maryam enjoys listening to her parents and making sure that they continue to like her. So she adopts their ways, and she's a pleaser, you know. And just in case she ever crosses any lines, her father or her mother kind of come down on her really, really hard, and she apologizes, and that's it. And she's going to be told that her marriage is going to be arranged. She doesn't have the freedom to choose a companion. You know, they're going to choose it for her. And for her, it's okay. Melissa is not like that. Melissa is like that knightly girl. She wants to be creative, and she wants to be independent, and she wants to be an intellectual. You know, she wants to find a companion that matches her ways. She wants freedom and democracy. She lives under the tyrannical regime of her parents. My question to you is, which of them do you think will be more happy? Her, who's going to follow tradition, or her, who's going to be traditionless? She wants to wing it. She wants to create her own footsteps in life. Look, in society, you have really just two groups of people, or maybe three. You have the powerful, you have the sheep, which is us or me, and then you have the creatives. And I suppose creative people have certain power, intellectual, emotional power to them, where they can create their own lifestyle. But the truth is, for the most part, human beings want to be dominated. You want to be told what to do. You want to be told how to think and where to go. You know, the happiest dogs are the ones that have been trained really, really well. That they had a dictator in their life for a few weeks or a few years. They know how to sit, they know how to run, they know what to eat, they know where to dump stuff. And these are the happy dogs. You know, they listen to you really, really well. Human beings are like that. We like to be dominated, we like to be controlled. And so if at any time someone has enough charisma or magnetism or something that can dupe you into believing something, well, the other part is, and I'm not sure if I'm remembering your question all of it or even answering any of it. I have a huge problem with freedom. I mean, look at this class. I don't really give a shit how many people come to class. That's not really my issue. What concerns me the most is, as an immigrant who lived a confused life for a very long time, who lived on bus benches for a while, who worked at Church's Fried Chicken and graveyard gas stations, who washed cars for a number of years, who in late life has come to understand the difficulties of being lonely, perhaps, being sad and depressed, perhaps, the importance of money and relationships. You know, I look at the complexity of this particular culture. When you have freedom in the hands of people who don't know how to think, well, you know, it's like the end of the semester. Nobody shows up. No one does any work, as if nobody cares about their outcome. They assume that they're going to be 20 for the rest of their life. In a couple of years, they're going to be turning 30 or 40. No schooling, no education, no diploma, no money, nothing. How are these people going to survive? In a culture such as this, where 40% of kids under the age of 10 are medicated. I mean, the only thing this culture gives people is just poison for the most part. You know. Now imagine if the culture was one of, at least in terms of education, it was like a tyrant. You sign up for a class, you stay in the class, and nobody gives a shit how you think about it and how you feel about it. No one cares how you feel about an instructor. You're not here for me. Get a goddamn grade and go home. That's an inch closer to graduating. And you realize you allow people to live under dictatorship for about maybe 10, 15 years. Once they have their degree, once they're intellectually savvy a little at least, once they have a job, once they have their money, say, okay, you know what? You want to go fuck up your life, go fuck up. That's fine. At least when you understand that you've messed things up, you have something to go back to, which is you have a diploma and some power. But freedom, without the benefit of being educated. And add to the fact that this is a culture that's about, it's only 200 years old. It's not very reflective. It can be reflective. I mean, how often do you see a 10-year-old sitting back and saying, oh, I wonder what the meaning of my life is? I mean, in a very serious way. It's a 10-year-old. 10-year-olds want to run around and just break things. They're like Melissa. I mean, not like that, you know. It's only when you get up in age, when you've lived as a culture enough life to realize whatever is born must eventually get sick and die. And then, you know, a culture comes together and says, you know what, we need to create a narrative that works like aspirin. You know, no one really cares what sort of a headache you got and how it comes from, or why it comes. You know, the truth is aspirin is like this universal medicine. If you have a headache, just try it. Take 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, you know, I have a headache, you get Advil. You go exercise and your body aches, take Advil. I don't know how the hell it works, it just works. Talking about medicine, did I take my pills today? See, Melissa, what you have to look forward to. So, I think the only thing you should hope for is that if you're going to be duped, if you're going to be manipulated, coerced, deceived into thinking and believing a certain thing, that at least it's like 51% true, 49% false. You know, there's some elements of truth and benefit and health to it. That's all. You don't need to like me. That's the least of my issues. As a person of color, just finish the classes. Go to a really, really good school. No East Bay, no Berkeley. You know, good school. I mean, Berkeley is great. Go to Berkeley. You know, go to big name schools. Just, what was your question? Maybe you can ask a different question. That was just... Carol, anything? No? Yes?
I have a question.
Sure. Forgive me, Leah. Just, yeah.
Do you think there's any value in seeing people like, I think you touched on that subject.
Yeah. You know, I think it comes in stages. There are, granted, some people who are born to be a little introverted, and they're like Tolstoy. I don't know why Tolstoy was condemned from such a young age. The Russian novelist, you know, at the age of like 10, he sits and he says, what's the meaning of my life? And as a 10-year-old, you don't have very many tools in your toolbox. So you push the question away. Then you get to be 15. And when you're kind of confronted with such a heavyweight question, like a Mike Tyson question, it devastates you, you know, and we are cunning animals. We don't like pain. So we push the question away like anything else that's painful. You know, this class is painful. I don't want to listen to this guy. I play with my phone. This class is boring. I'll just miss it for today. That's how we deal with pain. And so then at the age of 15, the question comes again, but it's twice as powerful, twice as intense. And still, Tolstoy is a novice. He pushes the question away. Again, the question comes forth at the age of 25. And this time it's a heavyweight. And he gets punched out. And he loses consciousness. And when he comes out, he tries, and once again he's victorious. He pushes the question away, and the question goes into hiding for a number of years. At the age of 35, he's unable to. The question just lives with him now. His name is no longer Tolstoy. His name is, who am I? You know. So the point is, some people are condemned that the moment they are born, after a few years, kind of like Kierkegaard. I was born, my beard was gray already. I was born an old man. Okay, so those people exempt. We don't want to talk about those people because it just, I don't know, the egg just chose the wrong sperm, while, you know, a few thousand were traveling towards it, and that particular sperm was just, you know, had some disabilities, and so when the kid comes out, just, who am I? What am I? Okay, so those people aside, the way I think for the most of us it works. But there is another way, which is the following. Going back to Leah's question. Let's say you're living a very linear life. You know what you want. You know who you are for the most part. You're studying geography. And let's say you come to this class. And I'm not talking about short-term classes, but say 16-week classes where you and I mean, my short-term classes, I just don't feel comfortable with people. It takes a while. Imagine it's a 16-week class, and initially when you come to this class, your spidey sensor says, yuck. I look at Amir and I want to throw up on Melissa. But you don't. And you don't drop the class. Sometimes our feelings and our intuitions in time prove themselves to be wrong. Okay? So as you and I interact some more, you begin to like me some more. And then at some point, you happen to be unlucky enough for some of these ideas to go inside you. And when you talk to your friends, you talk about these ideas. When you are sitting doing math, you say, man, I hate math. I want to do more philosophy. So you drop your math classes and you take more philosophy classes. And then what usually happens, I become a billboard. Every time you come to class, I blitz you with advertisements, i.e. ideas, to the point where you become consumed. And then one day you go to your mom and you say, Mom, this is my last semester getting my bachelor's in geography. I'm quitting geography, I'm going back to college, and I'm starting philosophy. So some people are manipulated, sometimes in a positive way, sometimes in a negative way, to change their ways and adopt the ways of someone that they find attractive. Okay? So all of a sudden, what happens in your case, for example, in this particular scenario, is that I create meaning for you. And I become a GPS towards your future. Then there is another way that it happens, which is the following. Let's say, and we're just going to assume that you're a heterosexual, you date at the age of 15, you don't really know much about attraction or desire or sex or any of that stuff, but it's organic, it comes to you and you just pursue it. And sure enough, you sit with your companion, talk about your future, having kids, doing this, doing that. Right? 18 comes about, you enter a different phase of life. And the stuff that made your relationship last for about 3 years, those ideas, those pleasures no longer work for you. You want something different. How it happened, I don't really know. The truth is, I think if you go back to the Gospel of Luke, you can't make the grass grow by pulling it. Even though your parents may say a few things to you about the unhealthiness of your relationship, you love this girl, you like this girl. And no matter what anybody says, it's not going to force you to leave, okay? You're not manipulated. You can't be manipulated. But at the age of 18, something about it just shifts. And you say, you know what? I have different desires, different pleasures. I don't know what they are, but this is not making sense for me anymore. True, it may be that desire has lived out its life. It's been saturated now. It's hemorrhaging. It's collapsed and it's dead. You can't inject an ounce of passion, so you walk away. So at the age of 18, for example, you want a companion who's your study buddy. You go to the library together, you come home, cook together, all that stuff. But you're not yet in what we call pragma in Greek, which is a committal stage. Sure, you guys are sharing the same roof, you're sharing the price tag for things, but ultimately you're not there to stay. And after a few years, you graduate from school, you look at your companion, you say, you know what? I think I want to go out there and just figure out my life on my own. This is done. So now you enter a different phase of your life where your meaning is you have a job now and you were working on your social status image. And again, no, I don't think anybody knows how these shifts come about, but they do come about. And every time you walk into a different phase of life or a different stage of life, meaning, purpose, identity, everything changes. And with those things changing, you also leave behind the friends you had. And you only pull up those who have similarities to your newfound goals. Okay? So at every different stage, we leave certain people behind and we grab new ones. Okay? Then you get yourself to a place where you say, you know what? I've spent enough time chasing, stuff. I want a relationship that has a long shelf life, like a marriage. You couldn't do this at the age of 18, or 25, or 35, or 40. It has nothing to do with money. There is something to be said about emotional stability that comes especially to men much later in life. And money can't buy that for you, okay? And all of a sudden, again, your meaning changes, And with every change in the stage and every change in meaning, a different set of questions come about. And those questions cannot be answered by going to the previous stage. It doesn't work, And so your taste is kind of like your palate, At every stage, your palate begins to desire different things. The old food no longer sustains you. And then you get married to a very nice companion. At a certain point, it's not enough. You want children. And then you get a little older and you realize, well, life has sucked the life out of you, and it happens. At a certain point, you speak about retirement. And not so much retirement from, life, retirement from a certain stage of life. You no longer want to be a husband. You no longer want to be a father. It doesn't mean you want a divorce. It simply means you want to spend more time in your study now. And every time your wife calls you and says, "Do you want anything?" her voice just irritates the hell out of you. It didn't do that for the longest time in your relationship, but now it does. For the first time now you want to attend to your own needs. Your relationship with time has changed. Your own energy, to your own mind has changed. You find them to be much more valuable. My experience, and I'm nobody to, give advice to, my experience would be the following, is the following. If I don't know how to work with clay, and if I don't know how to make an oven, and how to shape a cup, if this falls from my hand and shatters into 1,000 pieces, I gotta trash it. If on the other hand, this cup is being held by a man who's proficient in clay, in oven, in shaping and forming, okay, I can turn this to dust if I don't like the shape. And then I can reshape it accordingly. If you give your life, if you give yourself, to someone who can shape you, and if you like that person, then that person can give you a meaning that will last you until your body is healthy. The only reason why I am here, Kirill, is because I met someone at the age of 17. And I adored him for about 10 years. And he became a family friend for 30 years. And then he died of cancer. I liked him enough to have him inspire philosophy inside me. Now, you may not like the way I teach, and you may not like the way I do philosophy. Okay? Now, your feelings about me and my teaching pedagogy is irrelevant to me. Okay? All I know is that for the last maybe 45 years of my life, it has been a really, really, really interesting life for me. I've been in the classroom playing with ideas. I'm a heterosexual man. Ideas for me are like women. I sit in my office at 4 a.m. and I undress ideas. And I want to see everything as best as my capacity allows. That's a good life to be had. And it's all because I allowed a man to walk into my life and shape me. So my recommendation would be, society is this bucket of advertisement. It creates desires and passions and purpose and identity. Your parents create purpose and identity. Your culture at large does. Once in a while, you can run into some people and you don't know why, you don't know how, you don't know why you like them the way you like them. These are just mysteries, and I think they're just best left to be remaining mysteries. And they have the power to shape you. If you like sociology and you can find an instructor who can shape you in that regards, more power to you. But the idea of you being free, and that freedom causing a good amount of confusion and turmoil, and then you sitting somewhere and saying, I want to give my life meaning. The only meaning that you will have is a lifelong depression. You know, good books can inspire you. You know, I mean, I always find that woman who wrote the Harry Potter series, what's her name? J.K. Rowling, right? Locking herself in a hotel somewhere for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months and just writing 10, 15, 20 hours a day. That's a beautiful life. You know? So, the other part is there are many things about life that we just don't like. And not liking those things forces you to go on this quest to find things that you like. That's a meaningful place to be. So if you take an anthropology class and one of the questions that your teacher asks is, what does it mean to be a human being? The answer is simple. Meaning-seeking animals. We don't know if there's an afterlife, but Neanderthals, you know, they put some tattoos on your arm, they put some instruments in your grave. That's what we do. We seek meaning. Next time a companion leaves you for another, you know what you do? You ask why. You want meaning. What's the meaning of this? Next time you get an 85 out of 100 in a class, you know what you say? Why? Next time you spend 20 years of your life in a cubicle, you know, all of a sudden one day you ask, why? With every why, a meaning is crushed and a quest begins. Doesn't end. Right, Melissa? Mariam? Anything?
Well, it does feel like we're just moving towards that final stage of life. Everyone, eventually, everyone gets to the point where they need to find that need. Used up.
Everybody else has been used up?
All the other sources.
Right. Yeah.
Would it really be wise to seek out that meaning before it's too late, before you make those appointments?
You know, it's a great question that so I'll give you two examples. I washed my first corpse at the age of 12. And you're a kid, you don't really understand, but some questions come about when you're washing a dead body. You're going to ask questions like, what the hell happened? Is there a soul? Is there a God? Where did life go? Why is this guy dead? The heart stopper. Why? How? When? Who? You know. But you don't consider time. You don't consider old age. None of those things you consider. You're just, you know, a young punk. When you get a little older, you know, when I got to be, I think, 16 or so, a few years later, I washed my second corpse, and it was very, very different now. At the age of 16, you begin to, I mean, you suffer from confusion, which is normal, and then there are lots of windows and doors open. And those windows and doors, when they're open, they force you to look at things you've never seen before. And whenever you encounter something that's new, all these questions come about, you know, that you've never asked before, and if you asked, you never felt. And one of the things that at least happened for me in washing this body was that there is a Hindu scripture. It's part of the 285 Upanishads. Upanishad in Sanskrit means sitting at the feet of your teacher, which means, I mean, you know what you do with your legs, right? You take them to the bathroom, you go to the crummiest, dirtiest place for all the wrong reasons. So when you sit at the feet of your teacher, you become like dust, you become like dirt. Your teacher will walk all over you for one simple reason, to make sure that you grow up. Instructs you to behave a certain way. Now, Katha Upanishad, there's a saying that in certain moments in life, you're looking for something that the mind can't think of, that the eye can't see, that the ears can't hear, that the nose can't smell. I mean, you can think about it, but you don't really know what it is, okay? All of a sudden you realize that when you're washing a corpse, you say to yourself, man, death can come at any time to anyone, which means that time is very, very short. And most of the things that I am doing at the age of 17 is just stupid. I want to do something creative. The problem is, once you remove all of life that lives inside you, you're dealing with a vacant property. When something is empty, how do you fill it? And with what that is meaningful and valuable? And that is devastating. Okay? Now, this is what we call depression. In depression, what you realize is that all that exists in there is darkness. Books can't reach you, people can't reach you, thoughts can't reach you, hope can't reach you. It's just dark. And when it becomes so dark, because there is this emptiness, and in emptiness there is not, remember, the very fact that you ask a question means you're not completely hopeless. That there is a glimmer of light, a rope, a thread you're hanging on to. That you can still see something out there. Okay? When you think about the shortness of time, and most of the things that we put in time are without much value, you have to carry a cross now, and the cross is this. Where are you going to go that you won't regret later on? What are you going to do that will not force regret later? What sort of conversations are you going to have? What are your pursuits? And the thing is, we don't really know. I mean, it's a horrifying place to be. You know, this weekend is coming up and it's Thanksgiving, so I guess people are going to get together and do whatever. Remember the question you asked in this class today. And the moment you want to open your mouth and participate in your reunion with your family, before you actually say anything, ask yourself, is it really worth saying anything? And if you're honest, the answer would be no. And when people are laughing and you want to participate in their laughter and you want to laugh with them, catch yourself. And all of a sudden you realize that you, with the power of reflection, you have turned off every ounce of joy that life could potentially give you. There is a reason why in the Quran you don't have any stories about Muhammad having a good time with life, you know, or Jesus never having a belly laugh, or Socrates. I mean, that's the problem with reflection. Is it worth it? Is it valuable? Is it meaningful? The answer is always going to be no. I'm sorry? Yes. I'm going to Roseville right after this class. Yeah, yes. That's your question. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to be able to enjoy life without condemnation following you everywhere. Markel, anything? Anything? You work today, huh? Okay. Melissa, anything?
You said that laughing with your family is not valuable and meaningful. Why?
So there are two things. Laughter forces you out, whereas sadness forces you in. When you are forced out, you become engaged with things out there. And when you're engaged with things out there, your reflection for the most part is on pause. Okay. When you're sad, on the other hand, you're forced in. And a lot of whys and hows and whens and whos come about. And you're forced to reflect. Reflection is always solitary, whereas laughter is always communion, you know. And so it depends on really where you are in life. If, for example, my father is 93 right now, and he's beginning to slip once in a while. And when you're up, that age, at any time things can happen. So seeing my father will be very fun. Just looking at him. And he's very healthy in many ways, and we've had a great relationship for the past 70 years, even though I'm only 60. So I can engage with him, and that's an outward activity. Just in case, while we're all gathering, my father has a stroke and dies, then there's going to be this tremendous loss. We'll all share in some tears and some sadness. Then at a certain point, again, my gaze will be outward, which is towards my mother. She's 70 some. He's the only man for her. What is she going to do? And then the politics will come in. Who's going to take care of her? Is she going to live in this house? It's a little big for her, And then I'll drive home to Roseville, say on Monday. And as I'm driving, I really want to be left alone. I don't want my wife to talk to me. I don't want my kids to harass me. I'm driving, beginning to think about time, beginning to think about my old age, given the fact that I myself, I'm not really 20 anymore, so I had a triple bypass, which means that my time could be up at any time. And then you realize my ability to laugh and to be, fun around people is not as pronounced as it once was. And so if you're able to enjoy the presence of other people for all the right reasons, I don't want to laugh at a silly joke, but I will laugh if my father tells me a joke. Not because my father is a funny man, and not because his joke is funny. I laugh because my father assumed that his joke is funny, so I'll laugh just to make him feel good. If you get into the habit of reflecting, for the most part, if that becomes a habit, you'll get used to living a very, very lonesome life. Now, it doesn't mean you won't get married. It doesn't mean you won't have children. I have kids. I'm married. But for the most part, I live very, very alone. And so once that becomes a habit, you need to have the resources so that your aloneness doesn't turn into loneliness. And if once in a while you become lonely, it doesn't get to a place where there is just complete darkness, where you become so unreachable that you get depressed and your depression becomes chronic. Then you just become a burden to your family and everybody else and yourself. So yeah, you should, your age, you should just laugh. Just walk around, just laugh. Yeah. Yeah.
You, in the Tuesday class, you mentioned the story of Joseph.
Joseph, yeah.
Can you talk a bit about that?
What time is it? I want to make sure there is enough time to.
11:50.
Oh, we got like 25 minutes. Is that it? So there are two main characters in the story. You can find the story in the Old Testament. You can also find the story in the Quran. The Quran gives you a fuller version because now you have access to the Pharaoh's wife and some of the stories connected to Pharaoh's wife and Joseph, which you don't have in the Old Testament. But all those things aside, you have this man named Ya'qub, Jacob. Is that how you guys say it? Ya'qub, Ya'qub, Jacob. Hey, Carell, what's up, man? No. Now, Jacob has like 50 kids. But there is this other kid that he has. His name is Yusuf. How do you say it? Yusuf. We say it better. Yusuf. Yeah. Yusuf. Jacob loves Yusuf. I mean, he just loves Yusuf or Joseph. And that's the thing, you know. I mean, talk about the injustice that exists in families. Parents, for some reason, just like one kid more than all the others, exists in all the families. You know, and of course, when you confront them, Dad, you love my brother more. No, I'm a father to both of you. No, you're not. I see the way you are with him. You know, you pamper him, buy him whatever he wants, and with me, you just give me shit. What's your problem? So that's the first thing you need to understand. Since we're on the topic of, you know, Quran and the Old Testament, this old school philosophy of life, let me just say this. If you want to know how humanity was created, it was built on bloodshed. Bloodshed. If you want to know why we are violent, why we have envy and jealousy and resentment and anger and wrath and all those things, Cain and Abel. You know what happens to Cain and Abel? Cain has like a 10-acre property. The only thing it grows, thorns. Abel has like 200 square feet. That's all he has. He grows mangoes and apples and grapes and tangerines, beautiful. And Cain looks at his life and says, you know, I have all this, but nothing grows. You know, it's like, you know, like Michael Jackson. You have all this money, or the guy who played Batman and killed himself. What's his name? Robin Williams. No, not Robin Williams, this other dude. He played Batman, or the Joker, sorry.
Batman.
Yeah.
Batman.
They're almost the same. They, you know, you know, English is my second language, so just cut me some slack. Ah. So, at any rate, Jacob the father cannot live even for a minute without being close to Joseph, his son. Wherever he goes, he needs to be there. Whatever he does, he needs to be there. And his siblings look at this, his other kids, and say, the hell is this? You know? And I should tell you something about children. Children want love from their parents. The kids look at the father and says, man, can't you just give me an ounce of love? Hello. You know, and they realize that they can't do anything to have their father love them more. And so they say, well, let's do this. What if you were to take our little brother somewhere and cut his jugular? You know what that means? Like kill him. like Rambo style. And so they go to their father, Jacob, and say, Jacob, we were thinking about going to Yosemite, but you're old and, we want to take Joseph. And Jacob says, no, you guys are far too callous, you're idiots. Some harm is going to come to my son, and I don't want that. You guys go on your own. Say, no, we'll protect him, we'll do whatever, not a scratch on him. Not a strand of hair. He'll be well protected. And they're relentless. They keep telling him. And eventually Jacob says, remember, you promised me. You're taking him this way, and I want him back the same way. Okay. So they go to Yosemite. And they're standing at the very top of El Capitan. And they say to him, Joseph, look down. See all those animals. And he says, no, I'm scared of heights. Oh, come on, don't be a wuss. Just look down. And he does. And they push him. He can't fly. And he drops dead. And so they climb down. They remove his t-shirt filled with blood. And Jacob keeps looking amongst his kid to find Joseph, but he's nowhere to be found. And eventually, this other son goes to his father and says, they were attacked by lions. And they're all like scratched up, and they use some of Jacob's blood to kind of bloody themselves. And we fought these lions, heroically. And, Joseph the lion just ate his head. He's dead. And the moment Jacob hears this, he just cries. This huge scream tears his robe in half. That's a sign of grief for the old tradition people. And he cries and he cries and he cries and he cries. So much that he becomes blind. He becomes blind. They had thrown Joseph into a well. So, in Islamic, but more importantly Sufi, which doesn't really matter, some philosophy out there, Joseph or Jacob embodies or is symbolized as the human being. Human being has many things, many sons, many sources of entertainment. And then there is Jacob, and there is Joseph. Joseph becomes symbolic for beauty. And if you look at our lives, we're always trying to beautify our life. Whether you wake up in the morning and you put makeup on, you smell your clothes to see if they stink, you clean your car, you clean your room, you clean your language, you clean the way you think, you get degrees. We do whatever we possibly can to beautify our life. The problem with the sort of Joseph that we have in our lives is that they're all destructible. They're all eliminated by life. They all get devoured by jealousy, by envy, by resentment. They all get killed. And then beauty goes into hiding in the sense that there comes a point, going back to Carol's question, you get to a point where you want meaning and you want beauty, but you don't know where to look for it anymore. You become blind. And the reason why Jacob becomes blind is because of the anguish that lives inside him. He is sad, he is sorrowful, he's lonely. He's been questing for the entirety of his life. But at a certain point, he comes to realize that life down here can't give him what he's looking for. No one gets married to get a divorce. People get married to be happy. But there is one profound element that they're missing. You can't find happiness down here. And eventually everyone becomes blind. And they become blind or hopeless because they have tried and they have failed. They have tried and they have failed. And then eventually they give up. Now, the other aspect of the story is Joseph is not dead. Joseph has come to realize that he needs to go into hiding. He's in a well. Okay. And someone rescues him from the well. But the person who the person who gives you the dialogues of Plato doesn't understand the value of this book. You know, it's like when you watch TV, sometimes say, I found this painting in a garage sale and I bought it for $2.50. You know, and this guy looks at him and says, really, $2.50 or $250,000 or $250 million? No, $2.50. This is like a Van Gogh original. It's worth like $600 million. Really? Yes. So sometimes you grab beauty from somewhere, but you don't recognize it because you don't have the eyes that see. So the shepherd rescues, Joseph, sells it to Pharaoh. I think the face of Kim Kardashian under heavy makeup is beautiful. I think Brad Pitt is beautiful. But once they open their mouth, I'm not quite sure what exactly it is I'm looking for. But they open their mouth and the beauty goes away. The Pharaoh buys Joseph, but puts him in a cell. Then comes the 7 years of famine, and then 7 years of plenitude, but all those stories. Eventually, because of the famine, Jacob, the father, and his kids travel to Egypt. And the kids decide to go and pay a Pharaoh a visit and say, can you give us some bread? We haven't eaten for a while. Joseph, because of the way he interprets dreams, and that's the other thing you need to understand about dreams and interpretation. Have your dreams be interpreted only by someone who possesses beauty. Not face, but soul. Okay? And so Joseph is right there. And as the brothers and the father come in, he says, oh my God, this is my family. I have seen them. My brothers tried to kill me. They didn't, but they threw me in the well. Those pieces of shit. He remains behind the veils, the curtains. Something very strange happens to the father. He's blind, he can't see. And yet his sense of smell is like a dog. Human beings have about maybe 40,000 sensory things in their noses that have ability to smell. Dogs have 40 million. Jacob, he's blind, but he's able to smell. And it's very rude and discourteous to walk into the Pharaoh's palace and just roam around. You don't do that. But Jacob doesn't really care. He begins to walk around. And his kids ask, where are you going? I smell something familiar. I smell Joseph. Symbolically, it means the following. You're able to read the dialogues of Plato. You're able to read Marx's Communist Manifesto. But there needs to come a point in your life where you're no longer attracted intellectually to words, ink on paper. And you want to embody the allegory of the cave. You want to embody the stuff that lived inside Plato. I mean, really embodying, not simply like information. Not simply being knowledgeable, giving a talk in the classroom. You want to be Plato. And after roaming through lots of books and lots of conversations with lots of people, you become disappointed. And that's a huge loss. And then you cry. Metaphoric. You get depressed. And then once your senses have no longer any power to guide your life, your intuitive senses kick in. Now your nose come into play. So you come to this class and you say, in your novice stage, I want to know what Amir Sabzawari have to say about Plato. I want to write notes down. And I want to understand Greek history and Greek philosophy and Plato's ideas of idea, justice. Then you get to a different place in your life where you say, I don't really care about the information. I'm going to allow my intuition to tell me if Amir Sabzawari is a good teacher or not. That's your nose. That there needs to come a point in your own psychological maturity where you get rid of your sensory perceptions. And you say, I want my intuition to kick in. You know? So, that's the story. The quest for beauty takes place only when your senses have been put to pause. Melissa. Maria.
So we're kind of going into like the holiday season. Everyone, regardless of like what their culture or religion or background is, will be celebrating in some capacity. And this is something that we see like across cultures and like different time periods and things. Like people always gather to celebrate some holiday, and it changes like context and reasoning and explanation. Why do you think that is?
I think first, we're just very communal animals. We live in packs. We've always lived in packs. And maybe it's something that's been hardwired in our psyche. I mean, maybe the first man that was a woman that was thrown down here assumed that they can kind of survive life on their own. Then they realized, carrying this log by themselves is a little too heavy. So they had to learn how to be a bit more friendly, and so the neighbor, was not worried about being bashed in the head by a baton. So, and eventually they spent more time together and friendships developed. Then they realized, that it's really tough, looking for food. Killing Godzilla is tough for just two people. And so communities grew, and then, you work with someone shoulder to shoulder from dawn to dusk. And then you share stories, and, with the sort of animals that things just grow on you and emotions evolve. And if you consider what life really is for the most part, life is nothing but a set of stories that you create. And then because life is problematic, you have no choice but to engage in gossip. And gossip is good because life creates a lot of emotions inside you, and you need to let them out. And in letting those emotions out, you allow people to listen to you, like certain parts of you, dislike certain parts of you. Those who like your stories, now you find things that are common. And then there is also this organic aspect, which is, storga. Storga means it's a version of love. I mean, I don't even know why my kids gravitate towards my wife so much. I mean, I do things for them, those pieces of shit. I really do. There is something to be said about, being in someone's belly for about 9 months, hearing their voice, feeling the warmth of their body, the frustrations they go through. I mean, there is this intimacy that just grows.